I always thought my life was a perfect picture of a happy family. Work, home, 2 kids, Max and Annie, and, of course, Laura, my wife, my best friend, my rock. I was the one who worked like a madman to provide for us, to make sure our home was filled with laughter and warmth. My devotion to my family was boundless, and I believed Laura shared that feeling. But something changed. I couldn't pinpoint exactly when it happened, but our evenings grew quieter, her smiles became rarer, and even when we were together, it felt like she was somewhere far away. I tried to ignore the signs, but they crept into my mind like a cold draft through a crack in the window. One evening, as we sat down for dinner, I noticed her staring out the window instead of at me. Her eyes held a sadness, a longing that I couldn't quite understand. "Are you okay, Laura?" I asked, trying to catch her gaze. "Yeah, I'm fine," she replied, but her voice sounded as if she was trying to convince herself, not me. I wanted to believe her, but something inside whispered that she wasn't telling the truth. That night, when I went to bed, Laura stayed downstairs, saying she needed to finish some work. I heard her talking on the phone. Her voice was softer, more tender than when she spoke to me lately. Emotions churned inside me, swinging between anxiety and hope that this was just my paranoia. But when I woke up the next morning, Laura was gone. Her side of the bed was cold, just like her words had been the night before. I went downstairs, but she wasn't there either. A half-finished cup of coffee sat on the table. Her purse, something she always took with her, was still there. A sick feeling settled in my stomach. My first thought was that she had simply left early, but deep down, I knew that wasn't the case. My heartbeat quickened when I spotted her phone lying on the table. Had she forgotten it? Or had she left it behind on purpose? I picked it up hesitantly. I had never been the kind of man to invade someone's privacy, but in that moment, something inside me cracked. And then, I heard the door open. Laura was back. Her face was calm, but her eyes, they betrayed her. In them, I saw guilt, fear, or maybe relief. "Where were you so early in the morning?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady, though a storm was already brewing inside me. I just went for a walk," she said, but her gaze darted away from mine. I tightened my grip on her phone, feeling my trust slip through my fingers. This was only the beginning, and I knew I would have to dig deeper to uncover the truth, no matter how painful it might be. What was Laura hiding? And was I ready to find out that our marriage was nothing more than an illusion of happiness? After a morning filled with questions and distrust, I couldn't just let it go. The day passed in a blur of work, but thoughts of Laura never left my mind. When I got home, I tried to act normal, but every smile of hers felt forced, every word, a test of my faith in her. That evening, after the kids were asleep, Laura told me she would be staying late again. "There's a lot to do at work," she explained, but her eyes darted away too quickly, too nervously. I nodded, but inside, my gut twisted. I waited for her to leave, and only then did I pick up her phone, the one she had forgotten to put in her purse. My heart pounded as I unlocked the screen using the same old password she had never changed since our honeymoon. I felt like a traitor, but hadn't she betrayed me first, even if it was only in my imagination? Messages. I scrolled through them, searching for anything that could explain her behavior. And then, among the usual work conversations, I found them, texts from a number I didn't recognize. They were short, impersonal, but enough to set my world on fire. "I can't wait to see you today. You make me happy." My hands trembled as I closed the phone, feeling the walls of my reality start to crack. I tried to convince myself that it could be innocent, that I was seeing things that weren't really there. But then, the scent of her new perfume hit me, one I had never smelled on her before. A small detail, but in that moment, it felt like another blow. She came home late, just as she had promised, but there was something in her eyes, something alive, as if she had just returned from another world. "How was work?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. "The usual. A lot of paperwork," she replied, but I saw how she avoided my gaze, how her fingers fidgeted with the hem of her blouse. I had no proof, but the suspicion grew, spreading like weeds. I didn't know what to do with this pain, this anger boiling inside me. We went to bed, but I couldn't sleep. Not with her lying next to me, not with the thoughts racing through my mind. Thoughts of whoever she had seen, of whoever had made her smile in a way she hadn't smiled at me in a long time. The next morning, after Laura left for work, I picked up her phone again. This time, I was looking for something specific, something that could confirm or destroy my suspicions. And I found it. A receipt. A bill from a restaurant she claimed she had never been to. The name of the place was unfamiliar, but I knew one thing. It wasn't a business lunch. What if this was real? What if my life, my family, everything, was built on a lie? Emotions crashed over me, waves of anger and despair battling for control. But one thing was clear. I needed to know the truth. And so, I made a decision. I was going to follow her. What would I uncover when I started digging deeper? I felt like a spy in my own life, trailing Laura that evening. She had told me she was meeting a client, and I decided to put her words to the test. I hated myself for it, but my suspicion had turned into an obsessive need. I couldn't live in ignorance any longer, even if the truth would cut like a knife to the heart. I followed her from a safe distance, every step dragging me closer to something inevitable. But she didn't head to the office. Instead, she drove downtown, straight to one of the restaurants whose receipt I had found on her phone. My heart pounded in my chest as I watched her step inside, smiling at someone I couldn't see. I stayed in my car, my pulse racing as anger and fear wrestled inside me. An hour passed before she emerged, but she wasn't alone. A man I didn't recognize walked beside her. There was something intimate in their body language, something that had no place in a business meeting. They laughed, their hands brushing together too often, too easily for mere colleagues. When I got home, I couldn't even look at her without seeing what I had witnessed. I wanted to scream, to accuse her, but instead, I stayed silent, watching as she casually spoke about work matters. My soul was burning, and yet she seemed blissfully unaware of the hell inside me. "How was your meeting?" I asked, forcing my voice to stay calm. "Oh, it was great. We discussed a new project," she said, avoiding my eyes. I noticed the way she nervously tucked her hair behind her ear, as if trying to erase the traces of someone else's touch. I didn't press further. Instead, I dug deeper. While she was in the shower, I searched through her emails, looking for anything that could confirm my worst fears. And I found it. Hotel reservations. Bookings she had never mentioned. Restaurant bills from places she never talked about. Each discovery felt like a punch to the gut. Betrayal. But at the same time, guilt gnawed at me. I was invading her privacy, but wasn't it her who had driven me to this? "Lose something, Mark?" Her voice startled me. I turned to see her standing in the doorway, catching me rummaging through her desk drawer. "Yeah, I was looking for my pen." I lied, feeling my face heat with shame. She studied me for a moment, and for a split second, I thought she knew. That she knew I had followed her. That I knew everything. But then, she just smiled and walked away. The emotional whiplash was driving me insane. Anger, pain, love. I was being pulled in all directions at once. I had to know what was happening. I had to know who this man was. The one who had made her forget our marriage. And so, I made a decision. I had to see them together again. I had to see just how deep her betrayal went. What would I uncover when I followed her next? I was on edge, each day bringing new questions, new suspicions. I tried to distract myself, deciding to visit my parents, thinking that time with them might help quiet my mind. But even there, in the house where I had grown up, I couldn't escape the shadow of my doubts. As soon as I stepped inside, my mother wrapped me in a warm hug, but something in the air made me stop. The scent. It was familiar, too familiar. The perfume Laura had recently started wearing lingered in the room, unmistakable and out of place. My heart skipped a beat as my thoughts raced. "Mom, was Laura here today?" I asked, keeping my voice as casual as possible. "No, sweetheart. Only Thomas dropped by this morning," she said, busying herself in the kitchen. I felt my stomach tighten. Thomas. My older brother. The thought barely had time to register before the words tumbled from my lips. "Mom, I think Laura is cheating on me." She froze, the expression on her face shifting from surprise to deep concern. "That can't be, Mark. Laura loves you. She would never do something like that. Are you sure?" "I don't know, Mom. I've found too many strange things, too many inconsistencies. I just don't know what to think anymore." She turned to face me fully now, her eyes searching mine. "Have you talked to her about it? Maybe it's all just a misunderstanding." "No," I admitted. "I don't even know how to start that conversation." I'm afraid to find out the truth, but I can't live like this either. She sighed, her voice gentle but firm. You have to talk to her, Mark. It's the only way to know for sure. Maybe it's stress from work, maybe something else, but you need to face this. I nodded, but deep down, I knew this wasn't just stress. The perfume in my parents' house, the late nights, the avoidance, the lies. This wasn't a misunderstanding. I just didn't know yet how deep the betrayal ran. What was I going to do next? How could I sit Laura down and ask her what she had done? And more importantly, how would I react if my worst fears were confirmed? The thought of confronting Laura loomed over me like a sword hanging by a thread. But I knew I couldn't just talk. I had to see the truth for myself. I kept following her, waiting for the moment that would change everything. And finally, it came. Laura told me she had a late meeting with a client. But I no longer believed her words. I tailed her, keeping my distance, making sure she wouldn't notice. As I had suspected, she didn't drive to the office. Instead, she headed downtown, to a place I had never seen her go before. A small hotel. My heart pounded so hard it felt like it would burst from my chest as I watched her walk inside. I waited a few minutes, giving her time to get to the room, then slipped in through the lobby doors. I approached the front desk, forcing my face to stay neutral. Excuse me, I lost my room key. Could you help me out? I asked, using Laura's last name. The receptionist checked the system and, without hesitation, read out the room number. I stepped into the elevator, each floor bringing me closer to the moment of truth. When I reached the hallway, I saw it. The door to the room was slightly ajar, left open either by mistake or in a rush. I pushed it open. At first, all I saw were their backs. Laura and my brother, Thomas. They stood by the window, wrapped in each other's arms. Close, too close. The way only lovers hold each other. The world around me stopped. Time froze, and in that brief moment, my mind flashed through every memory, every moment I had ever shared with Laura and Thomas. And then, reality crashed down on me with brutal force. What the hell is going on? My voice shattered the silence like a bolt of lightning. Laura jerked away from Thomas, her face going pale with shock and horror. Thomas turned, his expression a mix of guilt and defiance. Mark, it's not what you think, Laura stammered, her voice shaking. Not what I think. I saw it clearly. I saw everything. Not what I think. I shouted, my rage rising like a tidal wave. I think I just caught my wife and my brother in a hotel room. So please, Laura, explain to me how this is something else. Thomas took a step forward, his voice maddeningly calm. Mark, let's just talk. Talk. I cut him off, my blood boiling. You betrayed me. Both of you. My own wife and my own brother. How long has this been going on? Laura started crying, her words spilling out in a frantic mess. Something about how it had only started recently, how they never meant to hurt me. But every word was like a knife twisting deeper into my gut. I stared at them, feeling something inside me burn. This was it. This was the moment I realized. Our marriage, our family, everything had been a lie. The room was thick with tension, so heavy it felt suffocating. I stood there, staring at them, every cell in my body vibrating with anger and pain. Laura was a wreck, her tears falling uncontrollably, while Thomas, my brother, stood eerily calm, his collected demeanor only fueling my rage. How long has this been going on? My voice was cold, each word laced with fury. Mark, please, let's talk about this calmly, Laura pleaded, her voice trembling like a leaf in the wind. Calmly? Are you serious? You cheated on me, with my own damn brother. Every word I spat felt like a blade cutting into my own flesh. It only started recently, Mark. We never meant for this to happen, Thomas said, his face now wearing some feigned attempt at remorse. Never meant for this to happen? I let out a hollow, bitter laugh. Did you just accidentally fall into bed together? I turned to Thomas, my fists clenched so tightly my knuckles turned white. How could you, Thomas? You're my brother. You knew what she meant to me. We got too close. Emotions took over, he muttered weakly, but his words felt empty. Emotions? And what about our family, our children? Did you think about them? My eyes burned into Laura, searching for any explanation that could dull the pain, but there was none. Mark, I love you, but I felt so alone. Laura's voice was drenched in desperation. Alone? I worked myself to exhaustion to give you everything. to make sure our family had everything. My voice cracked under the weight of betrayal. I know, and I appreciate it, but I wasn't happy. You were always working, and Tom, he was here. The words were like gasoline on fire. So that's what this is? Convenience. I turned to Thomas, my hands shaking with fury. And you took advantage of that? For the first time, his calm facade cracked. Mark, I never wanted this to happen. It just did. It just happened is not an excuse. You both made a choice. You chose betrayal. I could feel something inside me breaking apart. Irreparably. I can't even look at you. I can't be in the same room as you. Laura stepped toward me, reaching out as if to fix something that was already in ruins. Don't touch me. I snapped, stepping back. I don't even know who you are anymore. Mark, we can get through this. We can. She stopped mid-sentence when she saw the look on my face. Get through this? No, Laura. This is over. I will never trust either of you again. I turned toward the door. But before leaving, I gave them one last look. They were shattered. But so was I. I don't want to see either of you again. Ever. And with that, I walked away. But this wasn't the end. No, this was just the beginning. The beginning of my revenge. Because I wasn't going to let them get away with this. They had destroyed everything I had. Now it was my turn. I stepped out of the hotel, my body pulsing with rage and anguish. My thoughts spiraled in chaos, but one thing was clear. I needed to talk to someone. Someone who could understand. Someone who could offer me support in this hell. I drove to my parents' house, hoping, praying, they would be my anchor. But the moment I walked through the door, something felt wrong. That scent. Laura's perfume lingered in the air. Again, a suffocating wave of betrayal crushed down on me. Mom, Dad, you won't believe this, I said, my voice sharp as a blade. Laura is cheating on me. With Tom. I braced myself for their shock, for their outrage. But what I saw on their faces made my stomach drop. Not surprise. Not even denial. Just a long, heavy sigh. My father looked at me, sadness dulling his eyes. Mark, son. A terrible realization slammed into me. You knew. My heart stopped for a beat, waiting for confirmation. My mother lowered her gaze, guilt etched across her face. We didn't know how to tell you. A cold chill ran through me. You knew, I repeated, my voice quieter now, deadlier. And you did nothing? We thought it was just a phase, my father said, weakly, that they'd come to their senses. A phase? They've been betraying me. And you knew? My voice cracked from the sheer weight of the words. You knew, and you said nothing? We didn't want to hurt you, my mother whispered, her voice shaking. We didn't know how to stop it. I laughed. A bitter, empty sound. You could have told me. But instead, you chose silence. You chose them. I looked at them, two people who had given me life, who had raised me, who had been my foundation. And now, all I saw were traitors. You all betrayed me, I said, my voice eerily calm, the storm within me turning to ice. I stepped back. I could feel something breaking inside me, something that could never be fixed. I can't be a part of this family anymore, I said. My voice was void of emotion, just cold, final. You're all dead to me. Then, I turned and walked out. As I drove away, the rage inside me didn't fade. It sharpened, focused. This wasn't just about Laura and Tom anymore. My parents would suffer too. They had let this happen. They had chosen silence. They would feel the consequences of that choice. I was going to destroy them all. Laura, she would lose everything. Money, family, reputation. Tom, he would lose me. My respect, my love, his brother, and my parents? They had already lost their son. But that was only the beginning. My revenge would be slow, methodical, ruthless, every move calculated. How could I make them all feel the same pain they had inflicted on me? My vengeance had only just begun, and I wouldn't stop until I had burned their world to the ground. After leaving my parents' house, there was nothing left inside me except cold calculation. I returned home, but it no longer felt like mine. Every object, every framed photograph on the walls felt like a mockery of my life. The remnants of my so-called happiness were nothing but ghosts of a past I no longer believed in. So, I did what needed to be done. I planned. I knew what mattered most to her her reputation, her job, her status. I started with her career. Using my connections, I spread carefully crafted rumors about her incompetence and ethical misconduct. I didn't need to lie, I just needed to cast doubt. A whispered suspicion here, a concerned remark there. Corporate environments thrive on perception, and soon enough, her colleagues started pulling away. Next, her finances. I meticulously reviewed our joint accounts and investments. I began discreetly moving money to separate accounts, ones she couldn't trace. I drained everything she had access to, leaving just enough for her to notice something was wrong, but not enough to act on it. Then, I hired a lawyer to initiate divorce proceedings. I built my case to take the maximum possible: the house, custody, assets. When it was over, she would be left with nothing. Revenge against him was more personal. I knew how much he valued his career, how proud he was of his so-called integrity. So I started gathering evidence. Photos, messages, anything that could expose him, not just to family and friends, but to his employers. I wanted the whispers of his betrayal to spread, not just as a family scandal, but as a professional liability. His reputation would crumble the same way my marriage had. For them, my vengeance was simpler. I would take away what they loved most, their grandchildren. I knew how much Max and Annie meant to them, how deeply they adored them. They had chosen silence over loyalty to me, so I would show them what it felt like to lose someone you loved. No visits, no calls. They would never be part of my children's lives again. I watched it all begin to unfold. Laura started noticing. First, it was her colleagues, pulling away, treating her differently. Then, it was the money. She lost access to accounts. Transactions declined. Panic set in, and I reveled in it. One evening, she came home, and I knew the moment had come. She sensed it. "Mark, what's going on? Why are you looking at me like that?" she asked, her voice trembling. I leaned back in my chair, my expression unreadable. Cold. Calculated. "I'm just looking at what's left of our marriage," I said evenly, my tone razor-sharp with ice. "I know everything, Laura, and I've already started." She paled. Her breath hitched. "What do you mean?" Her voice barely above a whisper. I leaned forward, my eyes locking onto hers. "I mean, I'm going to take everything from you." She shuddered, her lips trembling. "You'll lose your job, your money, your family. Everything you built, it will be gone. You'll be left with nothing, just like I was left with nothing when you took my trust and my love and threw them away." Her tears started falling, but I felt nothing. No guilt, no remorse, only satisfaction. This was only the beginning. The question wasn't if they would break. It was when. My revenge was in full motion, and each passing day brought new proof of its effectiveness. Laura was unraveling. Her career was crumbling, her access to finances was restricted, and I saw the panic slowly consuming her. But I wasn't prepared for what happened next. That evening, as I sat in the eerie silence of what was once our shared living room, strategizing my next move, Laura walked in. Her eyes were swollen from crying, but there was something in them, a determination I hadn't seen before. She stepped closer, gripping a small envelope in her trembling hands. "Mark, we need to talk," she said, her voice steadier than I had expected. "About what?" "You already said everything with your actions." My words were cold, devoid of any interest in whatever excuse she had come to offer. "This isn't an excuse. I know I deserve your revenge. But—" She hesitated before extending the envelope toward me. "You need to read this." I took it, my pulse quickening against my will. Inside was a medical report. Confused, I pulled out the papers and skimmed through them. A psychiatric evaluation. A record of therapy sessions. A diagnosis. Laura had been struggling with severe depression and anxiety. She had been in treatment for months, hiding it from me out of shame. I looked up at her, my grip tightening on the papers. "What is this?" "I didn't tell you because I was scared. Scared you'd see me as weak. Scared you'd stop loving me." Her voice was raw, filled with an exhaustion I hadn't noticed before. "And this," I motioned toward the report, my thoughts reeling. "This is why you cheated?" She swallowed hard. "I'm not making excuses, Mark. I take full responsibility for what I did. But I need you to understand. I was drowning in my own pain, and I didn't know how to reach you. Tom was just there." I flinched at the sound of his name. I wanted to dismiss it, to say it didn't matter, that nothing could justify what she had done. But the truth hit differently now. For the first time since discovering the betrayal, I wasn't just filled with rage. There was something else beneath it, something I didn't want to feel. Guilt. I had been so consumed by my work, by providing for our family, that I had failed to see what was happening right in front of me. I had missed the signs. I had left her alone. And in that loneliness, she had made the worst mistake of her life. I forced myself to look at the documents again, reading the dates of her therapy visits. She had been struggling for a long time, longer than I had even suspected. I don't know if I can ever forgive you, Laura, I admitted, my voice hoarse. But I need time to process this. She nodded, her expression full of acceptance. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Mark. I'm asking for a chance to start over, maybe even with therapy, for both of us. Her words hung in the air between us, heavy and uncertain. I didn't know what to do. My revenge had been about destruction. But now, I wasn't sure if I was the one destroying myself. Was our marriage more complicated than just betrayal? Had we both failed each other in ways neither of us had seen? And the real question, the one I was afraid to answer: what the hell do I do now? Several weeks had passed since my conversation with Laura. I had spent that time in solitude, reflecting on our marriage, my vengeance, and what we had become to each other. I watched from a distance as Laura tried to rebuild her life, searching for a job, attending therapy. I knew that my actions had already caused damage that wouldn't be easy to undo. In the end, I decided to meet with her again, not to rekindle anything, not to reopen old wounds, but to finally close this chapter. We met at the park where we used to walk together, where our children had once played without a care in the world. The place was filled with memories, some good, some painful. Laura looked better, healthier, but there was still an exhaustion in her eyes, a weight that even makeup couldn't hide. I've thought a lot about what you said, Laura, I began, meeting her gaze, feeling the internal battle between my lingering pain and the clarity I had finally started to gain. She nodded, her expression soft but cautious. I understand if you can't forgive me. I know what I did was unforgivable, she said quietly, but with genuine sincerity. I sighed, running a hand through my hair. You were struggling, and I didn't see it. I was too caught up in my own pain to notice yours. My voice carried the weight of regret. But I don't know if I can ever go back to what we were. Her lips pressed together in a sad, knowing smile. I'm not asking for that, Mark. I'm asking for a chance to create something new. Maybe not as husband and wife, but as two people who understand and respect each other. There was a quiet hope in her words, not of reconciliation, but of peace. I nodded slowly, and for the first time in a long while, I felt the tension in my chest loosen. Not completely, but enough. I want us both to move forward. The kids need to see us happy, even if it means we're no longer together. And with that, we agreed on a divorce. But not a bitter one, not one fueled by hatred. Instead, we made a promise to co-parent with love, with patience, with understanding. And as for my revenge, I realized my anger had gone too far. I had wanted to punish everyone, Laura, Thomas, even my parents. But in the end, I saw them for what they truly were: flawed, lost, human. My parents had been caught in the middle of something they never knew how to handle. Their silence wasn't betrayal. It was fear, uncertainty. I chose to forgive them, not because they deserved it, but because I deserved peace. As time passed, I started a new life. And so did Laura. She focused on healing, on rebuilding her career, on repairing her relationship with the kids. We still saw each other, at birthday parties, at school events. And though there was still sadness in those encounters, there was also mutual respect. That was enough, because I had learned something in the process. Revenge doesn't heal wounds. It only deepens them. True healing comes from within, from letting go instead of clinging to the past. And so, I closed this chapter of my life, not with a period, but with an ellipsis, leaving room for new stories, for new possibilities, for a new life.